Donald Trump campaign facing major defections after a video of lewd comments was released late Friday. More than 160 now Republican officials have withdrawn their endorsements from his candidacy. 30 Republican lawmakers want Trump to leave the race entirely. Yesterday, a senior Republican, Paul Ryan, said in a teleconference that he would no longer defend Trump. And this morning, Trump tweeted that he was, quote, now unshackled, and hit back at the Republican leadership. He said they didn't know how to win. But does Trump still have a shot at the top job if he's at war with his own party? How will this division in the Republican ranks affect Senate and House races? Joining me now from Washington is Kelsey Snell. She covers Congress for the Washington Post. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so obviously there's all sorts of Republicans who are now trying to distance themselves from Trump, from the comments that he's made on this video. How could distancing themselves from Trump protect them, help them? What are they thinking when they do that?
Well, House Speaker Paul Ryan had a phone call on Monday with all of the House Republicans, kind of letting them know that his position was that he's not going to be out campaigning with Trump or defending him at this point. And he asked them to kind of make an assessment in their own district for what would work for them. If they needed to abandon Trump, he said go for it. If they needed to embrace Trump, that was fine with him as well. It's kind of depends on what part of the country they're from. The House districts here are they're very tied into local communities. And so you see large shifts in the politics of each member. So for somebody, it could be very, very, very good idea to embrace Trump with open arms.
And the Democrats, I guess, how are they playing things? I guess you could go very strongly against Trump in some areas, as you're saying, and in other places you have to be a little more careful.
Well, Democrats just released an internal poll that they conducted after the second presidential debate on Sunday. And they found that voters are preferring Democrats in situations where they are being asked to choose between any old Democrat, any generic Democrat, and a Republican that either embraced Trump or originally embraced Trump and then rejected him. It is by 12 points the voters are picking at the generic Democrat.
So how does that make Democrats feel about their hopes?
They are cautiously optimistic. It is a pretty big mountain to climb for Democrats to retake control of the House. They have a 30-seat deficit at this point. And so, as of last month, they were hoping to maybe win 20. So adding that additional 10 seats would be difficult. But in the Senate, where it was already seen to be a toss-up, Republicans only have 54 seats there. And, in a 100-seat chamber, they would, losing just 4 puts them at even with Democrats. So in that case, Democrats are quite confident that they'll be taking over.
But the fact that there's even a light of hope for the House is quite something, right?
It is. We were not predicting that at this point. I mean, the House has had a very safe and comfortable Republican majority in recent years, and that was helped by when they redrew congressional district lines after the 2010 census. It made more and more Republican districts well protected. They drew it so that there were more Republican voters in concentrated areas. But even with that in mind, Democrats are feeling better about this election.
Wow. Okay. So Trump has sort of reacted to some of this. And I guess this is really about, as you said, Republicans trying to protect themselves a little bit, however they can. But he sent out a bunch of tweets today, one of them about Paul Ryan. I'll just read it for people. He said, our very weak and ineffective leader, Paul Ryan, had a bad conference call where his members went wild at his disloyalty. What is the state of the relationship then between Paul Ryan, regular Republicans, and Donald Trump at this stage, do you think?
Well, Paul Ryan, we'd like to describe him as a reluctant Trump supporter. So he has endorsed Trump and has not rescinded that endorsement. And he so far says he's not going to change his mind about that. I think that it's a very difficult and uncomfortable place for him to be because some of his members would have preferred for Ryan to continue embracing Trump. It is an existential crisis of sorts for Republicans who really don't know how they define themselves when the potential leader of their party is, embracing so many policies and positions that they just would normally never go near.
And when Trump says that the quote, shackles have been taken off him, what is he talking about there, and how is that being interpreted, do you think, by Republicans?
I think people are reading it as he is no longer going to allow people to tell him how to behave or how to rein it in, or that he should pivot away from some of the more controversial statements, like when he got into a fight with a Gold Star family, or when he talks about banning Muslims or building a wall. He sees the way that it's being interpreted by most people I've spoken to is they see it as him saying he is going to go out and say whatever he thinks is going to be read well in big rallies that he holds. So he, as somebody once said, let Trump be Trump.
Yeah.
He's going to go ahead and do that.
So, okay, so if Trump's going to be Trump, and you know, that may not actually work in terms of gaining him new support, what about the Republican Party, and what are the concerns that you're hearing from Republicans, you know, about like the long-term impact of the state of this party?
Yeah, I think that the biggest concern I hear is from so-called movement conservatives, the type of people who are really dedicated to ideas like small government and, you know, reducing the social safety net and cutting the debt and cutting taxes. For those people, those are the foundational hallmarks of being a Republican. And for them, they don't see any relationship between Trump and their party. And they're worried that Trump has livened up a portion of the electorate that maybe is not going to go away anytime soon. And, you know, for these movement conservatives, they don't know where their party is anymore. But that's not to say that these people who are voting for Trump felt like they were a part of a party before. So it's entirely possible that the Republican Party either fractures or, you know, has several years of trying to come to grips with what their party identity is now.
It seemed, though, from up here in Canada, that was sort of what happened with the Tea Party and Sarah Palin, and so it seems hard to understand that the Republicans haven't learned those lessons or haven't adjusted course to make sure they're picking up more people and better reflecting the country.
Well, Republicans say that the Tea Party movement and the way that it has evolved is different than the Trump movement because at its core, the Tea Party movement was, from a policy perspective, at least as it was expressed in Congress, was rooted in this idea of smaller government and of, cutting spending, and there was a familiar relationship there, and this is an evolution. The Trump movement is an evolution well beyond that. That is, some people say is rooted in things that are not quite so policy driven. It is an existential crisis for some Republicans, and it's unclear how they're going to move forward.